Hi, I'm Dr. AJ Lee, a learning implementation strategist and manager of customer success here at FranklinCovey. Welcome back to the Be a Better Leader podcast. This season, we're talking about recharging. We want to help you recharge your leaders, recharge your teams, recharge your culture, and recharge your results. As we've been discussing the many challenges organizations, teams, and individuals are facing throughout this season, culture looms as one of the make or break variables in an organization's success. Recharging your culture is key to keeping people at all levels engaged and empowered to give their best efforts, which in turn helps you to get the best results. And who better to talk about all of this than Todd Davis, a FranklinCovey senior consultant and thought leader, best-selling author, and our former chief people officer. Todd, welcome to the stage. So grateful to have you.
Hey AJ, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, we'll go ahead and dig in. I would love to start with the big question first, which is what are mission, vision, values? How are they defined? And why is it important for organizations to make sure that they're clear for their people?
Yeah, great way to start. The mission, vision, and values you mentioned earlier, ways to recharge your people. Culture is one of those ways, and I know I'm biased, but I would argue that culture is the way. And in my experience, and as you mentioned, I was the chief people officer for 18 years at FranklinCovey. The mission, vision, values, when done right, are really the foundation for the culture. The mission statement, the company's mission statement, really describes the organization's reason for being, or the reason for their existence. Why are you doing what you do? Franklin Covey's mission statement: we enable greatness in people and organizations everywhere. That's why we are in existence. I
Mm-hmm.
personally love our mission statement,
Yes,
and
agreed.
so do our employees. It's really galvanizing. It brings us all together, and it just again reminds everyone what is our reason for being. And then the vision statement describes where we want to head, where we want to go. And I've worked with several organizations who have a mission statement. They don't have a vision statement, and I think that's a challenge because it's great to understand why you're in existence, but where do you want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? What is the aspiration of the organization? So that's the vision statement: is what is the ideal state? What is it that you're reaching for? And then the values, in my experience, well done values really describe the top behaviors you want to see through the organization. I was out running with a friend of mine just the other day, and we were talking about the turnover in this person's organization. And it started out talking about a pay issue. And the more we talked, it really was a pay issue was a symptom, but the real challenge in our discussion turned out to be they don't really have defined values,
Mm.
and so people are really there's no real structure to say, gosh, what do those who are completely on board and engaged look like? What do they do? What are they modeling? So the values, sorry to ramble on about this, but the values really describe the ideal behaviors you want to see in an organization. And why that's important for attention is that then the employees can decide, gosh, is this a company I want to be a part of? Is this how I really get excited about when people are behaving this way?
I love how you articulated that, Todd, and really identifying the differences between all three, because I think a lot of organizations might assume that the mission is enough, that there's no
Yeah.
need to go down to actually position where we headed from a vision side and from a value side, give employees something to really cling to and connect to. For those organizations or leaders that might be in a place where they haven't defined one of those three specific items, mission, vision, values, what would be your recommendation as to a good place to start? Um,
Yeah, great question. I actually have been fortunate enough to help several organizations. I was just helping. It was a smaller company, but last month they were just getting started, and so it was more. My role was more to explain to them what we just talked about. What is this? And then where I think a great place to start is for the leadership of the organization. Let's say they don't have any of this yet. Let's say they don't have mission, vision, values. They have a purpose, maybe, and that's it.
yeah.
I would recommend that the senior leadership of the company decide, um, kind of what they want, not create the mission statement in a vacuum with them, but kind of decide what they want the organization to what their definition is of why the organization is in existence, kind of get that loosely defined, and then involve the entire organization. And
Mm.
that can be ominous, especially if you have a large organization. But we've done that. We updated. We've always had a mission statement, but we updated Franklin Covey's mission statement. Gosh, 24 years ago, and we still love it. So we haven't had a need to update the mission statement.
Yeah.
We can talk about the other things we've updated, but at that time we had a project leader by the name of Catherine, and we got input from every part of the organization on those words. What ended up being we enable greatness in people and organizations everywhere. So I wouldn't start with a blank piece of paper. I would start with the leadership having an idea of kind of the neighborhood you want the mission statement in, and then put that out and start to get input from various parts of the company, so that everybody feels like they had some buy-in or some say.
Wow. Wow. And I love that, because it is, I think a lot of executives or leaders assume that it is solely their responsibility to define these things. And just that deeper awareness to what you shared, to involve support and solicit feedback from the team, I think could be invaluable. From your experiences, once you have that buy-in, have you found that it's easier to empower employees to be able to execute upon those values once they're clearly defined and they have bought in to that mission, vision, values?
Well, absolutely. And for the reason you just said, if I've been a part of it, or at least I had some input, whether they used my word or my ideas or not, at least I was involved in it, then absolutely. Now, that brings up another topic another point that I wanted to make, and that is, so those original employees, fortunately, many of them are still here, but we have a lot of people, including yourself, others that joined us that weren't part of that. And so it's equally as important as employees come on to certainly make sure they understand the mission statement, but make sure they understand the pieces of the mission statement and what went into building it, and why we still today find it so meaningful and purposeful. And we talk about that in our interview process with people to make sure that it's something they would be really excited about, since they weren't here when we created it. But yes, to your question, absolutely. If people are excited about the mission statement, then it flows through everything they do, and it gives them, the why behind the what of whatever their particular role is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Uh, Kind of changing gears to a leader's responsibility in all of this. When they are empowered to take action and have their decisions aligned to the stated values of organizations, how can they make sure that they're staying on target? And what would be your recommendation to a leader that wants to continue to keep the values top of mind, to live them out, but practically, how would you recommend a leader go about that process?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because as we said, the values are really the behaviors you want to have the top performers, and what we hope everybody strives to be doing. And so if the values if a leader isn't modeling the values herself or himself, then starting we're dead in the water there.
Yeah.
And so I think first and foremost, the leader, she or he has to make sure that they can't just go along with the values, but they're really bought into them, that they agree with these being the top values. And we at FranklinCovey, we have 4 top values. I work this one organization I was talking about the other day. They have 15.
Wow.
That's a lot.
That is a
Um,
lot.
and there isn't a prescribed number. I think 15 is maybe too many. Maybe some would argue 4 is too few. But back to your question, I think a leader first and foremost needs to be bought into the values herself, and then uh, when they have the teams they're leading in that, when they see maybe a behavior that doesn't align with that, or they want to help reinforce the values, then they can come from a place of authenticity and say, gosh, here's why this is important. Here's why growth of the whole person is important. Or here's why, living our principles is important, because, and then they can go on and they will be seen as an example that models that. So I think it's really important that a leader not just buys in, but is modeling those values every day.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's that connection, right, of their personal values aligned to the values of the organization, and once they can identify that, to your point, they can better articulate confidence that this is what I aim to do. I'm not going to be perfect in it, but we're all moving towards the same target as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So, in terms of culture itself, really starting to drive organizational culture, how does a values driven culture impact employee engagement and retention from what you've seen in other organizations?
Well, back to this conversation I was having with this friend who they were experiencing such turnover, and while on the surface it looked like it was a pay issue, it really was people aren't passionate about this particular organization. And as I was talking to my friend and asking them why they are so passionate about it, they had a lot to say, but about why they are. And I said, so do the people on the front lines? This person's in a pretty senior level role, and I said, so do the people on the front lines even know some of that history you were just talking about, or some of those stories? And this person said to me, "That's a really good question. I don't know." And that's, I think, the crux of the answer to your question, AJ, is that if people understand the values and they can see the end result, when we bring, and again, just as an example, and sorry to keep referring to FranklinCovey, but it's where I work.
Yes.
When we bring people into the company, part of our orientation process, we show a couple of short snippets of some videos of our clients and what they've done. They're not ads for the company, but they're just showing the rollout of a solution or how it changed. And I watch it's on Zoom now, but I watch people's faces, our new employees' faces, as they're watching these amazing stories be told about how some of the solutions at FranklinCovey really changed the outcomes in their organization. And I can see it in our employees' faces. They're going, wow, and I'm going to be a part of that. And so I think the more that leaders can make sure, age old wisdom, but communicate, make sure that employees know, hey, whether you're the receptionist or whether you're the implementation strategist in our case, or the account executive or whatever, you're a part of this. You helped make this happen. And here's the part that you play in that. And you ought to be proud of that. And the more that you can communicate that and have people feel like they're, in addition to earning an income and getting their benefits or whatever, that they're making a difference in some piece of the world, it's really exciting and invigorates the culture.
Absolutely. And I think that's a culture that we all want to be a part of, right? Where it is overly communicated and people are bought in and able to raise challenges and those opportunities as well. Speaking of challenges that a leader may encounter when trying to really execute upon this opportunity to drive values through the culture, what challenges could you expect or have you navigated through when you're
Yeah.
trying to align culture to those values? And then what are some of the areas of opportunity to overcome them?
Yeah. So short of saying, well, companies that just do the opposite of everything we've just been talking
Yeah.
about, but yeah, where I have seen challenges are where the values haven't been clearly defined, and like you mentioned, or a company that may only have a vision or a purpose statement, nothing else. So that's great. I love the mission statement, but what does living that or being a part of that look like? I don't know. We haven't thought about that. So that's the first thing, is if you haven't really defined what does it look like to live our values, or to be a top highly effective person in our organization. What does that look like? So clearly defining what that looks like. If we haven't done that, that's a problem. If we've defined that, or if we've stated honesty. Okay, let's say you'll see some companies that our value statements are in sentences, but some companies are just in words. And so we say one of our values is honesty. I'm not criticizing that, but I would want, if I were in that organization, I would say, okay, and then put a little short line about what does that look like.
What does it look like?
Or integrity. Okay, great. Integrity is a great value. What does that look like in XYZ organization? So clear, getting down to when you're modeling that, what does that look like? That's another opportunity and challenge. If it's not there, it's a challenge, and it's an opportunity to create it. And then I think the biggest one I've seen is when those things are done, and yet the leaders are not modeling those things, and they expect the rest of the company, or do what I say, not what I do, or do as I
Mhm.
say, not as I do, and that's a challenge. So I think anyone in a leadership position, and as you mentioned, not perfect, we fall down, but
Yeah.
really good leaders, I think, work with their team and say, hey, will you call me out when you see me not modeling this, and allow me to do the same as the leader of this team, and let's hold each other accountable to these values. The other thing that I have failed to mention is the values really should be written in a way so that key decisions that are being made in the organization, whether it's how do we do right by this client or how do we solve this problem, is when we come up with the answer to say, does that align with our values?
Yeah.
Because I know we found ourselves sometimes in a situation where we're saying, gosh, here's what we'd like to do, but that doesn't really align with our values of making sure the customer is getting exactly what they have asked us to do. And so we got to rethink this. And so I think it holds you accountable when you have your values well articulated to do the right thing at every decision point.
Mm. And I love what you're describing, Todd, and you've been describing this whole time, is how the values drive behavior and how important it is to just be super clear as an organization, asking, like, what does this look like practically, giving that definition under the values, and then also being able to take a step back and use those values as a signpost, if you will, to ask the question, does this situation align to our values as well? So
Exactly.
we often at Franklin Covey, as you're familiar, use the performance curve as well, which references how important it is for an organization to move righter and tighter in terms of driving behavior and culture within the organization. When we talk about the impact on recharging leaders, teams, and cultures and results, what impact would you say that an organization is able to have when they institute the culture focus that we've been speaking of?
Yeah. Well, if the values accurately reflect the behaviors you want in the company, then huge impact. And again, just to self-reference here, in one of our core values, the pursuit of growth. And we talk about being committed to meaningful growth, both for our employees as individuals, but as an organization with our clients. When we talk about lasting client impact, is one of our four core values. We care deeply about our clients and making sure that they can achieve their own great purposes. So just as an example, that value, when we live that value, it helps us move, as we say, righter and tighter, because our focus is on the customer first. And is everything you're doing, are we making sure that at the end of the day the customer is getting what they hired us to do, and then some? And so on that particular value, if we've got everybody focused on that, well, then it serves to align everyone in the organization with the growth of the organization, and helping us perform at even a higher level. So all of that, as I ramble on, is to say that ensure that at least one of the values is tied to, in a good way, the appropriate growth of the organization and doing right by the clients and putting the clients first. That would be a recommendation of mine, to make sure you have a value that is client focused.
Yes, yes. Such a powerful takeaway. It's about the culture internally, but also about the impact externally as well. Uh,
Well, absolutely, because if I mean, maybe there's an exception, but I think most people, if I'm a part of something really meaningful and I helped some team or some organization achieve something that they were striving for, I feel pretty good about what I'm doing in my company, and I feel pretty good about the culture. So I think it comes back. We all want to be a part of something that matters and makes a difference, and so yeah, a value that focuses on doing really great client work, I think can have a, I know, don't think, I know can have a huge impact on your culture.
Amazing, amazing. Well, Todd, thank you so much for your time, for your wealth of wisdom and experience shared. For the listeners who want to gain more insights on building a strong culture, you can continue learning through our downloadable free guide called 3 Steps to Build a Culture Where Teams Thrive. You can find the link in the show notes, or you can visit franklincovey.com for more information and resources. Till next time.